Welcome to the Divine Style Podcast with Gerlinda, Stella, personal stylist and self-love coach, and Alison, Maiden, psychic medium, spiritual healer and metaphysical teacher. Each episode you'll experience spiritual lessons to cultivate self-love and self-expression so you can become the best version of you.
Hello, I'm Gerlinda.
And I'm Alison.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Divine Style Podcast. I'm super excited about today's topic. We are talking about what it means to be psychic, how you can recognize your psychic gifts, and how to develop them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just to sort of start off with, I suppose we should explain that you've just come out of the psychic closet.
I have come out of the psychic closet. I've been going through some of your workshops, which have been absolutely incredible. I've done Reiki 1 and 2 and Seishem, and also Awakening 1 and 2. So awakening your psychic potential. And they've been incredible. So just recently I discovered or confirmed that I'm psychic, but also that I'm a medium, which was quite mind-blowing, and we will talk about mediumship in a coming episode as well. But definitely the psychic ability that I wasn't aware that I had. I mean, I knew that I was psychic only because I used to tease my kids about it all the time, saying, you know, mum's psychic, be careful what you do because I'll find out.
I know what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think to some extent, I think I've been afraid of it, like knowing things and not knowing how I've known them. And the workshop was so confirming to understand the different ways in which I've been getting sort of psychic information.
Well, that's what I did, you know, in the beginning of when people used to ask me years ago, you know, how do I know that I'm psychic? And I thought, well, I really need to sort of create a workshop where people can come and talk about the different psychic abilities. And the thing is that until you talk about it, you don't know you have it because it's something you're born with. And so therefore it's in your life. It's a part of your life. And so, you know, some people actually just think that's normal to feel that way. Or, you know, they may not see it as normal. They could see it the opposite way, get really, really scared about what's happening to them and actually just shut it down through fear. And so, you know, by talking about it, by making it normal, by saying, hey, it's not just you, there's lots of people out there that have this. The human race, we are, you know, wired for being sentient beings. So being able to connect into emotions and feelings of other people, just like animals do. Now, I often say to people, watch how birds fly. They fly in unison. You know, when they're in a flock, you see them all turn at the same time, or you see them, you know, moving in this beautiful array of it's like a ballet in the air. It's amazing. You know, they're all connected. There's not one guy at the front with a little microphone going, we're turning left or we're turning right. You know? So they're doing this through their own psychic connection. And so animals in general have that ability. And you probably, if people have cats or dogs, they would think, yeah, I've had experiences where my animal knows when I'm feeling down. Or
I just had an experience with my cat yesterday. I looked at her and I had the thought, because she was lying on the floor, and I just looked at her and I thought to myself, if you want to get up on the bed, you can. Literally at that moment, she got up and jumped on the bed, and I thought exactly that to myself. Gosh, they're so psychically attuned to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as animals go, I mean, we're all animals, you know, in one shape or form. We are wired to be able to communicate with each other in this way. But as I said, fear often blocks the natural abilities that you have come in with. One of the things that I get a lot with people is the clairvoyancy. So as children, they're able to see quite clearly. They have vivid dreams. Sometimes they may see ghosts or spirits, and that can really freak a little kid out. You know? So they tend to sort of shut it all down because of the fear of it. And then later in life, when they're starting to explore it, because they're interested, and they start to say, you know, I feel like when I was a kid, I was able to see and experience things, and now I can't. That we have to help them open that up again. And that's what the workshop is.
How did you go for yourself? Because you were born with all 7 psychic senses open, ready to go. So for you, it was very normal. Nothing seemed strange. Or was there a particular sense that felt uncomfortable for you?
That's a really good question, actually. Because I think I've mentioned to you before about my wonderful mum, who is now in spirit world and has been for a long time. But she was able to guide me through what was going on. And so it wasn't abnormal for me at all. And she knew at quite a young age, I think it was maybe about 4 or 5 years old when I first started talking about things, then they would happen, or talking about a person. And for instance, my sister, was living away from home. And I said to her this day, Lynn's coming over today. And she said, oh, no, love, she's at work today. She can't come over. And then 5 minutes later, she's at the door. So those sorts of things happened a lot when I was a kid. And we also had ghosts in our house. And so I talked to them all the time. And I went and talked to her about the lady that was babysitting me at night. And she would say, there's no lady babysitting you. She's like, what's this lady coming in, sitting on your bed at night? And then we discovered it was the owner of the house that had died in that room. So there's lots of those sorts of stories. But growing up, I was really fortunate in having a mum that understood, and she was psychic herself. And so it was explored and encouraged. The only thing that I was told to do was not to mention it outside of the family. So, don't tell the kids at school what's going on. Don't tell your friends what's going on, because they may not be open to it and they may judge you harshly.
And I got told the exact same thing by my mum as well, because she was very psychically aware. And I mean, there was this one day she just quickly turned left down the street, like out of the blue, just turned left. And I'm like, what are you doing, mum? And she said, I don't know. I have to go this way. And as we were driving along, a lady fell over and hurt herself, and mum drove her home. So it was mum in her was like, the angels told me to do it. It was definitely something that, but she would say, don't tell anybody, because it did. It put a lot of fear into me, because she said, we've got this ability and people will judge you for it.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, it's a lot more accepted now than it ever has been before, which is the good thing, that we're not dragged off and burnt at the stake anymore. Well, certainly not in Australia anyway. So this is one of the big points now, to get people to recognise what they have and how they can use it and how not to be afraid of it. Because it is something that we should all have access to in our everyday lives and should be embraced. It's a part of who you are.
And I was able to put a post out the other day on social media, and I had so much support from people. And some people wrote some really beautiful things, like, we knew you had special powers. It's very, very sweet. And that's why we're able to do a podcast on this exact topic without that fear of being burnt at the stake.
Yeah. You're always going to get people judging it, or if they're not aware, if they don't see it themselves, if they've never had the experience themselves, well, they're going to be skeptical, and that's fair enough. And I always say to people, look, I believe you should be skeptical. I'm probably one of the biggest skeptics out there, actually, until I can see that someone actually is genuine, or that they are doing the right thing by people. Then I am quite skeptical of that, and I think that's quite okay to do that. There are people out there that will try and rip you off, and it's as simple as that. Okay? And that comes with every type of vocation, by the way, not just the one I'm in. So, to be a little bit more selective and always go to people that have been recommended, or someone else says, oh, look, yeah, they're genuine. That's important, but don't be cynical with it. Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, you could say that about germs back in the 1800s. They didn't know germs existed, but there you go.
And I think that was the biggest thing, is having the understanding around this stuff, because once I understood it, I lost the fear that was associated with it, because of the lack of understanding that I did have. And now I've got this really deep level understanding, and I know that will only grow deeper and deeper, but it's nothing to be afraid of. And other people have the exact same experiences. We just don't talk about them.
Look, exactly right. And quite often people will say they're confused about what they might have, So I thought it might be a good idea to go through them and explain a little bit about each one, because we do have categories of these psychic abilities, and you will tend to have more than one. Most people have at least one if they haven't completely shut down or switched themselves off, which is their prerogative and their free will, and they can do that if they want. But most guys even will say they have a gut feeling, and that gut feeling is actually called clairsentience. So that is when you get that feeling in your tummy, in your solar plexus area, and that is, a good feeling or a bad feeling. So you may be coming up to, a dark alley or something in a foreign country, and you're thinking, I'll take this shortcut, and you get that really bad feeling. Don't go down there. That is a warning, and that is coming from spirit. So that's what we call clairsentience, or, following your gut, as some people like to say. There's actually quite a big difference between clairsentience and clairempathy, because it comes out of the same place, and meaning your solar plexus chakra, which is your feeling center, but it's a different thing altogether. So with clairsentience, that's a feeling of things that could happen or are about to happen. With clairempathy, you're actually tuning into people's emotions. So it's a different thing. So you can be in a room full of people and have, different emotions with different people, and you're picking up on how they're feeling. And that's being an empath or having clairempathy. And you can also pick up on people who are lying to you as well. So there's that feeling of mistrust, I don't trust you, or what's coming out of your mouth doesn't feel right to me. All right, that's still clairempathy. Then we have probably one of the most famous ones is clairvoyance, because people often say I'm a clairvoyant, meaning that I can see the future. And that's what clairvoyance is. It's called clairvoyancy because it's a French word for clear seeing. That clair is clear in France, okay? So that's how that works. And of course, everything else is just varying different degrees of where you're feeling it on your body. So the voyance is the seeing, the sentience is the feeling center, okay? So the voyance is an interesting one because we see future paths as they are rolling out. And how I see this in people is it'll come to me in pictures in my mind. Like, when you see or you think of a memory, something you did yesterday, okay? And you have that picture in your mind of where you were and what you were doing. It's that, but it's not mine, and it hasn't happened to me. So I see this picture and it's like an imprint, and I can usually see where it's headed or what's happening in that picture. So it's a little bit like a movie that might roll out for me.
Do some people call those flashes?
Yeah. So it's a thing that will drop into your head that you definitely know is not yours. Usually the person involved in that vision, so the people you will see, or if you don't know the person, it could be someone that you're yet to meet, they will be playing an important role or part in your life path. Now, understanding that we all have free will, that can actually change with your free will. And so I often say to people, just because you haven't met the love of your life yet, and he was predicted to come in, at a certain time, he might have fallen off his horse on the way in, For all we know, there's been some kind of incident that's happened to him, and he's decided that it's going to take him another 6 months before he's ready to come out. So you can't get timing right usually with this, because there is no real timing here because of free will. But if you're destined to meet somebody, or if you're destined to do something, it will come up at some point. It'll keep repeating until it happens. It just might be blown out a bit.
And I think we spoke about this in our dream episode, but clairvoyancy, that can also show up in your dreams, can't it?
Yes. They're called precognitive dreams. And a person who does that is a precog, or somebody that can actually see future in dreams. The most famous would be Edgar Cayce, the Sleeping Prophet. If you guys want to look him up, pretty awesome. He was the most famous in our time frame, if you like, modern history, because he used to give very, very accurate readings on people that were all over the world, and he would go into sleep to do it, and he would talk in his sleep. So that was, an amazing thing. And I've been quite into all of his stuff. He's actually written a lot of books about Atlantis and other things as well, which are quite interesting. So the next one that we'll talk about is the audience. Now, that's not something that is, I suppose, a common one. The others, what I've just spoken about, are very common, and usually the ones that people notice the most, I suppose, as being outside of their normal senses. But clairaudience is about hearing spirit. Now, it can happen in a couple of different ways. So we can hear them with our physical ears, as in a voice saying something to you. And it's normally when you're just coming out of sleep, or you're in that meditation phase, or you're just in that twilight zone, I call it, where you're not quite here in the third dimension, you're just sort of on the edge. And there may be a voice that will say your name, or it could be a familiar voice. It might be a loved one that's, calling your name. And sometimes they'll yell things at you. And I've said before this one about my daughter-in-law. They told me she was pregnant. It was, she's pregnant, really loud in my ear. So, you know, those sorts of messages will come through sometimes when you're in a real spot of trouble, true. And I was driving along a country road late at night, and I was coming back from work, and I was quite tired. And I had someone scream in my ear, "Stop!" Like literally scream. And because I was so shocked, I slammed the brakes on. And then a very large cow walked out onto the road.
Amazing.
So I was living in the country, of course, at the time. So yes, I would have hit the cow. There's no doubt about it. But the reason I slammed the brakes on, of course, was this scream of stop.
I wonder if it was the cow. Don't hit me. Perhaps. Don't hit me. Yeah.
So, you know, they do give you warnings that way. The other part of clairaudience is when you have a word or even a sentence that can drop into your mind, and you'll kind of internally hear it. That's the best way I can sort of describe it. When I'm doing live shows with people and the messages come through from people, like one I remember was, "You're not going to get out of here alive, so you may as well enjoy it." That was a quote that was said when they were driving in, and they said it to each other when they were driving into the show, and then Spirit said it back to them. And of course, they're both like, "Oh my God, we just said that to each other in the car." And so that was a full sentence. That doesn't happen all that often, but they just wanted to let them know that they were in the car with them and listening to what they were saying.
That's amazing. I've been at your shows before where people have told me very similar stories. And for myself, because I've heard it outside of my head and also in my head, it was so normal to me. I didn't realize other people haven't experienced that before, because it is, because people have said to me, "Oh, how do you know it's not your own voice?" And because it doesn't sound like my voice, or it's not how I would speak. It's not the same sort of language or terminology I would use. And it's
also stuff you wouldn't be thinking about either.
Yeah, very true. It's not anything that would make sense that I would think it myself or hear it. Yeah, and I've heard voices shouted out. I think for me, one of the most amazing experiences I had was I was having a bit of a meltdown, and I was saying, "I don't know what to do." And in my head, I got A Course in Miracles, and I got told to go to a specific op shop to get it. And I went to this op shop after 3 days of the voice telling me over and over. And when I got there, I looked around the op shop and there was nothing there. And I felt so defeated. I was like, oh, it was all in my head. I must have been making this up. And as I turned to leave, there was the book face up on a shelf. And it's been one of those really amazing instrumental moments for me to go, oh, this is real. There is something outside of me that I can trust and that is looking after me and that has my back. And it's an amazing thing to be able to tap into your psychic senses, to be able to have those experiences, feeling so connected to something that you can't see or touch.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, so many people out there that be listening to this right now and going, "Oh, I've had those experiences myself," you know, where you just know it. But it's so difficult when you're around people that don't understand, and you tell them and they'll go, "Oh, you know, that was just a coincidence," or "That was just, you know, something that could happen to anybody." I do think we do need to be a little bit sensible about stuff. You know, if the curtain's blowing, you need to check to see if the window's open. You know, those sorts of things. But it's more like, well, that was obvious. That was an obvious one, that it couldn't come from anywhere else. So it has to come from Spirit.
What about when people say, and since also myself coming out in this way, saying I'm psychic and I'm a medium and I can hear things, people saying, "Oh, be careful who you're listening to," because I think there's a lot of fear associated around this as well. Like, what if it's a demon, or what if it's something evil that's talking to you? What would you say about that?
Well, I mean, that definitely can happen. And I spend a lot of time teaching people how to protect themselves, how to raise their vibration, using tools like Reiki, which is unconditional love. When you're surrounded by love, the dark can't enter. So, you know, you've got to always sort of think about the positive aspects. If you're negative and you're feeling really negative and you're doing a reading for someone in that space, it could end up being something that's a lower vibration giving you that information. So as a reader, we have a massive responsibility to people. And that responsibility needs to be, you're constantly, I call it spiritual hygiene. where you are constantly cleaning, you're constantly cleansing yourself and protecting the area and protecting yourself. And that can come through many different ways. We can ask angels for protection. We can use prayer. We can use things like Reiki, which is obviously, as I said before, a very powerful tool. But it's important to make sure if you're going to be working in this area, or even for yourself or doing readings for yourself, you need to protect your area first. Things can be influenced, particularly things like tarot cards or pendulums. They can be influenced. And if you have a ghost in your house, I would not advise doing readings in your home, because they can definitely influence the outcome of that reading.
That's great advice.
It's something that I really hammer this into my students. You must do your spiritual hygiene first. We have a couple of others on our list too. So, this is one of my favourite ones, clairaudience. We actually call this clairsmelliance, just as a bit of a joke. But it's when you can smell things that other people can't smell. So a few people at the shows often say, oh, yes, I can smell Mum's perfume when she comes to visit, or I'm smelling cigarette smoke around the house. No one smokes in the home, those sorts of things. So it's like a vibration that spirit are putting forward that will be picked up by your psychic ability. And even though the smell is no longer there, it's a memory of that smell that your psychic ability is picking up. So that's pretty cool. That can happen at any time of the day as well. And I think we're so busy sometimes that we forget that we've got these little messages coming through to us. So when you smell a non smell, and you definitely can't track it down as something normal, you just have to think about who was the one that wore that perfume, or who was the one that was a smoker. My dad was a terrible smoker. He smoked 3 packets a day. And so, whenever I smell the cigarette smoke, I know it's him hanging around, and I'll tell him to go outside because he's not allowed to smoke in the house. So there's a lot of messages that come through in different senses that sometimes you're not aware of. If you have a special gift, it can be a very rare one to have. So you're quite lucky to be able to have that one. The other one that is also a rare one, which this is my least favourite one. This is called clairgustance, and that is where you can taste. So invariably it'll be something horrid, like they liked onion soup, or it was this more or less comes through when I do mediumship and the shows. One of the most favourite memories I have was a little girl, and she passed when she was about 3 years old. Sometimes when children come through, they don't always give me words. It's more in emotions and feelings and memories of things they had, particularly if they were babies. This little one gave me peanut butter and banana sandwich. I could taste that really strong. And I said this to her mum, and she said, oh, my God, she used to live on those. She wouldn't eat anything else. So that was like real confirmation that was her daughter, because I would never have known that information. It's not something you can find out, So that sort of stuff is like absolute. So the clairgustance one is a very good way of picking up on people who have passed over by their favourite things to taste. But it also has a precognitive aspect to it, where you may be tasting things in your mouth that you need to eat for your well-being. Like, you might wake up with a taste in your mouth and think, oh, I really need to eat an orange, or I really need to have a banana, or, whatever it might be. And it's like your body is like, I need this, and you need to have this because I need the vitamins, or I need the aspect of the food that's important.
Sometimes I think I do this by just looking at a brownie and pretending I'm eating it, even though I'm not. and you really.
Well, as you know, I can't eat any of those yummy things anymore, so I always live vicariously through my children. Go to a restaurant, they get the good dessert, and I sit there and tune in. No calories that way either. So I mean, they're probably the basic ones that we will talk about. There's just one more, and this one can actually be something that I think people have a lot, but they don't realise they have it. And it's called clairtangency. And that's when you can pick up the energy of an object. Now, this might be a chair someone has just gotten out of. You could sit in that chair and you could feel the emotions or the health problems or the pain of the person that has just sat in the chair. You've come to my shows many times, and you'll realise that when spirit come through to me, they give me the pain of how they passed.
Yes.
That is not always fun for me, but it gives me a really clear picture on what actually happened to them. And sometimes that's very useful. And when I've worked in police cases, etc., in the past, and I've had to, unfortunately, sometimes go through people's passings in detail as to what happened to them, I've actually felt stab wounds and things like that. So that's part of the deal with that one. It's not a good one to have in that sense, but it's also a very good tool if you're working in this area. But the clairtangency is also used in readings for some people, so they can hold an object that somebody has worn and they can pick up on the energy of that object. So getting then the feelings of what that person felt. So that then taps into the clair empathy we were talking about. Or using the other psychic senses by tuning in with your clairtangency, but getting information through the other psychic senses that you have.
And this one's known as psychometry.
That's how you read, yes, with psychometry. But you have clairtangency, and to be able to do that, that's there.
I've known for a very long time, since I was a child, that I was able to have that I had this gift, and my mum showed me how to use it, and she showed me how she interpreted the different messages she was getting through. And it's always again been one of those things that really surprised me at the accuracy of what I could pick up by feeling an object that somebody had. But I always thought it was actually the object, not necessarily spirit giving me that information and using me as a channel to pass it on. So having that understanding just recently has just been really amazing for me to be less fearful of being able to do this. And like you said, a lot of people have it. And I've been in the classes with you, and people are really shocked at the information that they can pick up from one another just by holding something. And I think it works the same as if, even when you shake someone's hand, you can get all of those psychic senses can kind of come up. Like you might hear something or see something, and like you said, get that gut instinct if I can trust this person or not.
When I was working in the ambulance service, I used to pick up on a lot of people's illness, that was just a part of the deal. But I was actually standing next to a colleague one day, and we were talking to another colleague, and I got terrible chest pain. Like it went right the way through the middle, and in fact, it took my breath away. And I actually said to him, "Are you feeling okay? I don't know why, but I want you to get a checkup." And he laughed at me, and he said, "Well, of course I'm fine." Anyway, he ended up having a heart attack the next week. So, sometimes these things that come through are warnings for people as well. And there's ways to say things to people. You don't have to come out and say, "Oh my God, I feel like you're going to be hit by a truck next week." You don't want to do any of that stuff, because that's really not good. That's not good ethically either. But you can just be concerned for them. How are you feeling? What's been going on lately? Just, start the conversation like that. Remember, it's not okay to just want to be right all the time. It's about the person that you're dealing with. The messages are coming through for a reason, but it's not to make you look good or to make you be right. And I'm fine being wrong, by the way. If there's something that I'm picking up on and it hasn't happened or it doesn't happen, I'm really happy about that, particularly if it's a bad thing.
Yeah, be kind to yourself about getting it wrong, because that is really important. Even you were very open about the fact I can't get it right 100% of the time. And some of the information you might think it's wrong, but later on they'll come back and say, "Hey, that was actually really important information. Thanks so much."
So, it's okay to be wrong. You must try, you must have a go. Get hold of any family member that's willing to sit down with you and try the psychometry. Just take their watch or take whatever they've worn and let things happen. Let it come through. There's nothing bad about it unless you start telling them bad things. And then I would actually say, don't do that. Okay. So just hold back on those things. But, be careful how you say things. Always be concerned about their well-being. And some things don't need to be said, even though you're picking it up.
Yeah, I think it's really important, isn't it? I know the other day when I was in your workshop and I held a person's necklace, and I was able to see like apples, but then as the picture became clearer and clearer, it was actually not just apples, it was apple pie. And I was like, "Oh, it's not apple pie, it's apple strudel." And she said, "Yes, that's what my mother always used to make." So it's really great when you are allowed the time to sort of sit and sift through, because if I just said apples, that wouldn't have meant anything to her.
Exactly, that's right. And to be able to allow the information to flow. And don't forget, gosh, this information is coming from a much higher dimension than what we're in, so it takes a lot of energy for them to get that through to you. So we have to raise up to them, and then they come down to us. We kind of meet them in the middle, if you like. So that's why meditation's important, clearing your mind's important, spiritual hygiene, make sure you've got nothing nasty around before you do your readings, and just to ask the angels for protection. Of course, Archangel Michael's the best guy. He comes in all the time and helps with psychic people, especially when they're in the developing stages. We just ask him for protection before we do anything. And just have fun with it. Don't get too serious. It's like giving me a box full of your stuff, and I don't know where that stuff goes. I've never seen it before. It's just a box full of stuff. But you know where it goes in your home, and you know exactly what you do with it. So when I give you stuff that I'm seeing, I have to try and describe it as much as I can for the truth of what I'm seeing, not my interpretation of what that is, you know? And so there's a big difference there. And I think sometimes people, when they do readings to people, they do fall over a little bit in the interpretation. So they may have had a really bad relationship, or they've just broken up with someone. And so all men are bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, dump him, get rid of him. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got that going on in their own world. So you've got to really detach yourself from your own personal stuff and just describe exactly what you're seeing and exactly what you're feeling. That's all you need to do. It's up to the person to put the pieces together.
I think there's going to be a lot of people listening today really opening up their eyes to the different psychic awareness of their own abilities and things that maybe they've hidden or used to have. What are some ways, if people are listening and they've thought, oh my gosh, I did see something when I was little and I've shut it down, what are some ways people can start to open themselves up again to these psychic abilities?
Well, meditation is the first thing. So we've got to quieten our mind enough for information to be able to come to us. Being in an environment with like-minded souls, so going to a meditation group, that's a really great way to start. Reiki is awesome. It opens people up. It heals past wounds. It really starts to get your intuition kicked in, as you know.
Yes.
Experience it yourself. And also find a good teacher, you know, someone that's got the ability to be able to answer all of your questions and be able to give you the right sort of guidance. And that would be somebody with a lot of experience themselves in this area. As you know, we do workshops pretty much constantly. The Awakening workshop I would recommend for most people who want to explore their psychic abilities. That's the best one. We do those regularly in Cairns and in Sydney and in Adelaide. But I'm working on an online platform at the moment where we'll be able to stream that into your lounge room for you.
Very exciting. I think one of those things we spoke about too, and I'm sure we'll do a whole episode on this, but, you know, gurus. And I think you've made it very, very clear to your students and to everybody, this is not me doing it. It's them, it's spirit. And we're just the channel.
I'm a channel.
And it takes away that ego. And it just feels really beautiful that we have the ability to be able to give back to people when maybe they are going through a hard time, or they're having a loss or whatever that might be. It's really wonderful.
Well, you know, gifted people have been put on the planet to help with this, and it is your job. It's what you've been born to do. So, and there's room for everyone. And this is what I say, you know, a lot of people come to me and go, aren't you frightened that your students will take all your people? I'm like, no, I'm glad they're there. I'm only one person. There's thousands of people that need help. So the more the merrier, you know, but they've got to be going out there and teaching and doing the right thing, and not the wounded healers that sometimes get around the place that look, I'm all for everyone on their own path and where they're at. But if they're having their own personal difficulties, they should not be working in this area and taking their own personal agendas out on the people they're seeing. So if you've had a bad reading in the past for that reason, go to somebody else. Have another go at someone that's highly recommended.
Time is amazing. Like, I think the timing of even me being aware of this, I've done so much of my own healing work, not only through other people helping me and assisting me with that, but my own journey within myself. And I think the more I've been able to clear my own karma and the past, the more my psychic ability has opened up. And I think it's just so powerful to be able to understand that there is divine timing in everything.
Exactly, love. And it's working on yourself. We never stop working on ourselves. I don't. I work on myself every day. And we're in the third dimension. We're going to make karma here. It's the way it goes, you know. So we're never going to be free of that one while we're here. We may as well just accept it, get on with it, and do the job. Spiritual hygiene.
Spiritual hygiene, very important. We'll do a whole podcast on that. If you are listening today and you would like to follow myself and Alison, please jump onto our Instagram, our Facebook, and you're more than welcome to share your stories, to feel a little bit part of a community. Like, you can comment on any of our posts or private message us. We're always open to hearing your own stories and your own journey.
Thanks for listening to the Divine Style Podcast. Please follow, share, and tune in weekly for more spiritual and self-love guidance. You can find out more and ask questions at gerlinda.com.au and alisonmaiden.com.